right, everybody, we are here and ready to go. I am delighted to be here today with you guys, and hopefully this is my last live stream from the hotel room. I am, by way of introduction, if you guys are new here, if you guys are watching the recording on YouTube, my name is Margie Remmers-Davis, and I am the creator of the Fast and Easy Way to QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor certification. And we have a weekly live stream inside our Facebook group, which is the QBO Gym Locker Room. So the locker room is a place to hang out and talk about all of the hands-on exercises that we create, not only for what am I trying to say? For our certification courses, but also for the QBO Gym, all the hands-on exercises we're going to talk. So while I have been on this trip, I had to kind of switch to Zoom. Normally we use a different software for our live streams. And I'm switching to Zoom, and it's a challenge for me. Like I'm not as used to Zoom as I am the other software, and something is happening with my Zoom so that it seems that every week one of you gets highlighted and I get to see you this entire time, even though I should really only be seeing me. And that person today is Margaret Coleman. So hi, Margaret. For some reason, I could see you this whole entire time, which means that that was last time too. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, anyway, my editor said that for the recording last time he covered you up with a logo. So I haven't actually seen it, but but anyway, but here on live, that's what we're going to do. So let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started here. All righty. So if you are joining us live, then you already know this, but just for the people who are watching us later on the recording, this is the weekly live stream that we do inside of our QBO Gym Locker Room Facebook group. The Locker Room is where you have access to nearly 100 absolutely free exercises to get hands-on practice using QuickBooks Online. You can follow along in our weekly live streams, and when I'm back home and life is normal, then we have we do surveys on what you would like more practice on, and then I create exercises for those things. So it looks a little bit different here, but if you're watching the recording, then the link will be down below so that you can sign up for our locker room. When you're inside the locker room, there is this section. Of course, mine looks a little different here because I'm an administrator, but generally it looks about the same. So right here, there is this featured section, and in this featured section, there is a post here that says "Welcome to the Locker Room" that helps get you oriented to using QuickBooks and to kind of how our group works. And then here is a link to our Fast and Easy QBO exercises. So if I click on that, I would, oh gosh, you're all covering up. Okay, so I'm going to get to a spreadsheet that looks like this. So in this spreadsheet, this is where you're going to find all of the links to the different exercises. So we have getting started, which are just the very simple, basic ones. Then we have the basic. These actually come from our basic level certification course. That seems kind of big. Let me see if I can reduce this a little bit so you can see more. There we go. So we have some of them are recorded on YouTube. So and we're working diligently to get all of our videos recorded so you can actually see somebody walking through the exercises and you don't have to wait for the live stream. But in the meantime, join us on the live stream. So we have exercises that come, excuse me, exercises that come from our basic level course, our advanced course. the QBO Gym, which I'll talk about in a minute. Pro Advisor challenges, these are ones that are actually inside your QBOA account that Intuit provides, kind of these hands-on, practice for certain concepts, but we turn them into our signature style, which you'll see here, which just makes it easier to actually follow along. So all of the exercises that I've talked about so far, those are absolutely free. Some of them come from our certification courses, which are, there's a charge for those courses, but we give you the actual exercises for free. So this is the QBO Gym, and the QBO Gym is it's a subscription product that gives you a monthly exercises, a ton more exercises for hands-on practice in QBO. It simulates life as a bookkeeper. Joel, he's my husband that's sitting back there. He also runs our customer service, and he likes to talk about it. He says that it's like a flight simulator. So it actually gives you, unlike the other exercises were just kind of like one-off where you're practicing doing a particular feature. The gym is, it actually simulates life as a bookkeeper. So you sit down and you start to work on his books, and you do a whole bunch of things, and then at the end you run reports and reconcile accounts and run reports as if you were actually Craig's bookkeeper. Craig, of course, being our fictitious business owner. So every month you get a new set of exercises. These are the August ones, and you can see that it's kind of in a we've got this gym theme. So we have warm-up exercises, cardio, strength training, and cool down. And for the last couple of live streams, we've been talking about locations, which happens to be one of the focuses of the July issue of the gym. And the reason that I wanted to talk about, I had this on my mind for a long time. I'm going to stop my share here. Okay. I've had this on my mind for a long time because this is a topic that people really, really struggle with in the advanced level certification test. And that is the idea, the difference between locations, your clients' locations, and your clients' customers' location. So your client being Craig, the one that you're doing bookkeeping for, he can have multiple locations, and then his clients can have multiple locations. And that's something that it's hard to wrap your head around, and it's on the advanced certification test, and people really struggle with that concept. So we've been talking about that the last couple of weeks for the live stream. And then today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about classes. Now, classes are similar to locations. So it's similar to locations in how you set it up and how it's used, but it also has some really key differences. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So in the advanced certification course, you'll notice right here, this is section 1, lesson 2 is all about classes. And there is also the lesson 3 is all about locations. And so for free, you can go through this exercise right here, which is the for class tracking. And in some ways it's the same, and in other, there's key differences. So but what we're going to do today is we're going to actually go through the version that's in the gym. So if you are not currently subscribed to the gym, one of the benefits of being on the live stream is that you get the exercise for free. And so Joel is going to post that in the chat if he hasn't already. And we're going to go through it. We're going to talk about setting up commercial versus residential work that Craig does. Okay, so now we do have it does say here, remember to use the same session of the sample company that you used for the previous exercise. So we don't have to worry about that. I will show you the differences in what we would have set up, but the screenshots won't be the same, but that's fine. We're just going to focus on classes today. Okay. All right. So let's read our scenario. Craig would like to track his income by residential versus commercial services. Okay. Commercial customers rarely cut back on landscaping maintenance because their businesses need to look great all the time, even when the economy is not doing well. Residential customers are much more price sensitive and less stable, but they sometimes hire Craig for large, profitable design jobs. So it will be important for Craig to keep track of how he is doing in each area. Okay, so let's see how we can do this. We'll start with the income. Now, in the free exercise, it's the same kind of scenario. It's the commercial versus residential, but with the other exercise, with the free exercise, you're going to reclassify all the transactions in the system. For this, we're not going to reclassify everything, and you're going to see why. Okay, so we're going to start with the income. The first thing we have to do is we have to turn on the classes feature. If you were with us when we did locations, then this will look familiar to you because this is very similar. So we're going to click the gear icon and select account and settings. I don't have a picture for that, so we're just going to go right here. This is our, again, if you're on with us live, you should know how to do this, know how to access your sample company. If you're watching the recording, there will be a link below that will teach you, it'll walk you through how to get your free QBOA account and how to access the free sample company. So it's all free, so you can learn. I love that they give us an opportunity to upskill while we're doing this. Okay, so this is our fictitious business right here that we are working on Craig's books. We're going to go to the gear icon and select account and settings. That's what the picture that's missing from the exercise. All right, so here, account and settings. Let's go back to the exercise. I can close this tab because I don't need to show you that anymore. Okay, so we're going to go to the advanced tab, then the category section, and turn on track classes. Okay, so right here, advanced tab. And right here in this categories section, if you're new to QBO, notice that when I move my cursor, each one of these sections is kind of highlighted. And then what I want to do is I want to click on it to kind of open it and make it available for editing. So I'm going to click here. That kind of opens up that section. And here are the track classes and track locations. So we're turning on track classes. Now you'll notice that classes has different options than location does. So with location, we had the option to change the label of location. So instead of calling it location, we could call it property or territory or business. There's a whole list there. Okay. We don't have that with classes. So classes is just always called class. Okay. But track classes has some options that locations doesn't. And that is, number one, warn me when a transaction isn't assigned a class. Now, when we did the location exercises over the last 2 weeks, you notice that location does not have to have, you can have it not assigned. And in fact, we did that in the gym, and we did that for a reason, because Craig opened up his new location, but it was just for, there were just a handful of clients in that new location. And it didn't make sense to reclassify all of the transactions in the system. We just did a few of them. So, but classes, do we want to do that? Or do we want to, make sure that a class is assigned to every transaction? Okay, so that's what that warning is. And then here is a difference too that classes has that locations and tags, which is what we're going to talk about next week, does not have, which is the option to assign a class to each row in a transaction. Okay, so that's going to be important later, and I'll show you why. So going back to the exercise, we're just going to read, this is what I just said, but just So I'm on track here. It says, notice you can set up a warning to make sure you always have a class assigned to a transaction. We're not going to be doing that for this exercise. As you'll see in a future exercise, it doesn't always make sense to require a class, so we'll leave this checked. And by the way, it is just a warning. So you get a warning, but you can still bypass it if you want. So it doesn't actually prevent you from adding the class. For adding the transaction without the class, okay? And then it says, notice too that with classes, you can decide whether you want to have a class assigned for each transaction, like we saw with locations, or whether you want to assign a class for each row or item in a transaction, okay? And here's the important part. When it comes to income, each customer will likely be designated either residential or commercial, so this doesn't matter. So you could have one class for the whole transaction. But when it comes to expenses, it's conceivable that Craig might purchase several products at once, and some will be for his residential customers, while some will be for his commercial ones. Okay, so that's the advantage of having the class for each line in a transaction rather than for the whole transaction. Okay. All right. So what did we decide to do here? We are keeping it as, we're unchecking, keeping this unchecked. We're keeping this as one to each row in a transaction. You'll see how that's different than locations when we get to this. We're just going to click save and done. Okay. All right, save and done. We talked about all this, so now let's go on. Okay, now we've set up we've turned it on, so now we're going to actually set up the classes. Okay, so we're going to click the gear icon and go to all lists, and then we'll select classes. Notice in this picture, locations has been turned on, but we haven't turned on locations today, so that's one area where it's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to click our gear icon. We're going to select all lists. Okay, and here's classes, but there's no location because we haven't turned it on. Okay, so classes. So here are our classes, step 6 and 7. We're going to click new and enter the name in the name field, call it commercial. We're going to do the same thing for residential. Okay, so new, we're going to call it commercial. We're not going to indicate that it's a subclass. And then we're going to do the same thing for residential. Okay, and then click save. Okay, so step 8. Remember that when we set up the locations previously, we could assume that any transaction that did not have a location was coming from the main office. It doesn't really make sense to make a similar assumption with classes. Would the ones without a class be commercial or residential? Okay, think about that. Before, when we did locations, if there was no location, we could say, oh, well, that's going to be the main one. But if we have one that has no designation for class, or that has no designation for class, would that be commercial or would it be residential? Yeah, it makes more sense to have them all assigned. Okay, so instead it makes more sense to make sure that every income transaction is assigned a class. Again, we'll use the reclassify tool. So we're going to go to account and tools and select transactions, or select reclassify transactions. Okay. Step 9, as before, due to the fact that dates are always changing in the sample company, we'll use an entire year to search. This time, however, we'll want to include all transactions through today. Oh, I wonder if I created transactions in a previous exercise that I'm going to have to classify. Well, we'll just do what we can do. Okay. Also for now, we're only going to focus on income. Tracking expenses per class is a bit more involved, so we'll handle that differently in a separate exercise, which we're going to go over again today. Okay. Due to the limitation of the reclassify tool, we'll do all of the invoices, then all of the sales receipts. Okay. So here we go. This is the from, so we're going to change this to last year. And then, so it automatically selected last month. Today is August 4th. So it automatically selected July 1st of last month, or July 1st through July 31st last month. Okay. But we are going to do a big range because it's a sample company. And if I just hit the letter T, it'll automatically put in today, as long as it's lowercase. Okay. And then, so we did that. And then the type field, we're going to select invoice. Unfortunately, we can't just say all money in, where we have to do invoices, then we have to do sales receipts. So we're going to do invoice, and then click find transactions. Okay. All right, step 10. Okay, start by reclassifying the residential customers. So you're going to click customer/vendor. Okay, and the way you do that is just clicking on the field to sort it. So here's customer/vendor. I'm just going to click that. So now it's in order by customer vendor. Okay, then select all of the ones that are names rather than companies. So we've got Gita Kalapatu, sorry, John Melton, Mark Cho, and Travis Walton, which you cannot see in the picture. There will eventually be 10 total residential customers. Okay, so let's go through. So we've got, scroll. Oh, here's Gita. Okay, then here's John. There's Mark. And there is Travis. Okay, so notice right here it says 10 transaction lines selected. So that should be what we need. Okay. Step 11, click reclassify, then select the change class to drop down to residential and click apply. Reclassify, change class right here to residential and click apply. Okay. All right, step 12. Next, you'll want to reclassify the remaining invoice transactions to commercial. So in order to do this, you'll need to change the filter criteria to show only those that do not have a class assigned. Okay, so just as a reminder, this is still the list from this range. This is still the list of invoices, okay? And both the ones that have no class up here and the ones that have a class are in this list. So we want to filter this list so the residential ones aren't in there anymore. So the way we're going to do that is going to go to class here and say all the ones that have none, that have no class. They have no class, guys. Okay, so, and we have to click find transactions. Find transaction. Wouldn't it be nice if it just automatically did it? But it doesn't. You have to click find transactions. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click the checkbox at the top of the grid to select all the transactions. So right there. Then step 14, we're going to click reclassify and change them to commercial. Okay, reclassify. Here's the change the class to commercial and click apply. Okay, now it says there's none. Why does it say there's none? Because we're filtering, we're looking for all of the ones that have a class of none, and they all have a class assigned to them right now. Okay, so that's why that says that. Step 15. Okay, so in addition to invoices, there are a handful of sales receipts that need to be reclassified as well. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use the type drop down to search for sales receipts. Right here, sales receipt. Okay. Note to, you may have to reselect all before you can select this. Oh, it seems to work just fine for me. Click find transactions. I think I forgot to say use the drop down to search for sales receipts. I should say right here, Joel, if you can make a note, I need to add in here, click find transactions.
What's that?
Step 15. Okay. So here they are. So let's see what we get. Reclassify Diego Rodriguez, Dylan Solfrank, and Kate Whelan as residential. Diego, Dylan, and Kate. We're going to reclassify those as residential. Click apply. And so I just have Pies Cakes here. So I'm going to click that one, reclassify, change class to commercial. Okay. All righty. That was about the locations. Okay, step 16. Now that we've reclassified a few old transactions, let's create some new ones. We'll start with an invoice for a commercial company. Okay, so we're going to click plus new and select invoice. Okay. Complete the form as follows. In the customer field, select Rego Travel Agency. Rego Travel Agency. Okay. The next step says delete the location field east, but we're not doing locations today. That was just if you're doing this whole exercise together, like in the gym. In the product service field, select Rock Fountain. Oops, if I can type. Rock Fountain. Okay. And then class, we're going to say commercial. Notice how the class is in the grid. That's because of the setting that we had in accountant settings, where we said it's per line item, not for the entire transaction. Okay. And then we're going to click save and close. Okay. And then next we'll create a sales receipt for a residential customer. Click plus new and select sales receipt, plus new, sales receipt. Who's this for? Shara Barnett. Okay. Note that Shara has a sub-customer, Barnett Design. It's possible that Shara is both a residential and a commercial customer. However, it's not likely that you would include both on the same sales receipt or invoice. Note that the location field is still empty from the last transaction. Of course, we're not doing locations in this exercise. So here's Shara Barnett. Here is Barnett Design, which is a sub-customer, which is how we identify multiple locations for Craig's customers. Okay, this is what we talked about in the last couple of weeks. Okay, but we're just going to do Shara Barnett. And what did she buy? Gardening. Let's see. Gardening. And amount of $50. Oh, not 50 cents, $50. Okay, and then in the class field, select residential right here. Okay, again, notice how it's in the grid. It's not its own thing. Okay, and that's because of the setting in accountant settings. All right, so now we're just going to click save and close. Okay, all right, so that is our income exercise. Now let's take a look at our expense exercise. So Joel, if you could put in the second link there. Starts out the same way. Make sure you're using the same session of the sample company because, I should stop and look at the chat. So the, when I use my regular streaming software, I can see the chat going the whole time. And so I can highlight comments and I can comment on them, but I don't have that for Zoom. So let me see. Joel, talk about, let's see. Oh, some of the can turn off your camera. It is wonderful. Margaret, what are you saying is wonderful? I hope you're talking about the gym. All right. Joel has some things each about the gym. It's very helpful. I hope you're talking about the gym. Joel put a bunch more things. Someone isn't muted. Oh, I had my headphones in, so I couldn't hear if there was sound. I'm sorry about that. Hope that's been taken care of. Let's see. Sarah asked a question. How do I obtain the scores for each part? Oh, I did the certification following Intuit study materials. How do I obtain the scores for each part if someone knows I need them to show my graduate professor? Yeah, unfortunately you can't. So I don't think that you see your scores if you pass. Like if you pass, it's just over. We can, if you will, Sarah, if you will write to support@fastandeasyqbo.com, then we'll look that up for you. But I'm pretty sure that you only see your scores if like immediately after you've taken the test. And then after you click out of that, I don't think you can see them again if you've passed. All right. Thank you. Let's see. I didn't do it immediately. And now when I go back, I can't find the scores. Yeah, I don't think so. I thought about calling Intuit. You might have to do that. Margaret says, the gym. Yay. She loves it. Thank you. Yes, I can turn on the chat window. Okay. All right. Actually, you're seeing my screen. So this whole thing while I'm watching the chat is you've been able to see it, I think. I don't know. Zoom confuses me. All right. So I'm going to close that. Hopefully there didn't seem to be any questions about the exercise we just did. So we're just going to go on to commercial versus residential and the expenses. And then we're going to run some reports and so you can see how this shows up. Okay. All right, scenario when tracking commercial versus residential, it's fairly simple to differentiate the income. It's not as straightforward to differentiate the expenses. For one, overhead expenses such as rent and utilities fall into neither class, though you could set up a third class for this. Also, some of Craig's purchases, such as tools and equipment, will be for both classes. Again, you could set up another class for operating expenses. Finally, Craig may make purchases for multiple clients at one time, some that are commercial and some that are residential, and he may or may not know which at the time of the purchase. For example, Craig may purchase 10 bags of soil and not know how many he will use for each client. Okay, so for this exercise, we will edit an expense to indicate the class. If you would like to practice reallocating expenses after the fact, you may want to consider this exercise, which is part of our advanced certification course. Okay, so that's one of the free exercises. It's linked in here. So if you want to grab it, which is all about reallocating expenses after the fact. And one of the ways you can do that is using class, and that is on the advanced certification test. So, which is why we have it as part of the advanced certification course. Okay. All right. So we're going to go through this and then we're going to run reports and then you'll see how this all ties together. Okay. All right. So step one. So previously we used the reclassify tool to change the class on a transaction. This is good if you have several transactions to change at once and if all the items in the transaction are for the same class. You can just edit the transaction, however, and you'll need to do that if you have separate classes for each item. Okay, so the reclassify, if you're going to use the reclassify tool, that you would have to assign the same class to the entire transaction. You can't do line by line. Okay, so on the left nav bar, we're going to click expenses and then select vendors. Okay, so here we are in the left nav bar, expenses, and select vendors. Okay, this is the wrong exercise. That's the one we just finished. Here's the new one. Okay, step 2, scroll to then click Hicks Hardware. Okay. Hicks Hardware. Okay, so here's Hicks Hardware. Okay, we did that. Step 3, click check 75 anywhere on the row. Here we go. And that's going to open that up. Notice that Craig previously purchased several items from Hicks. The rock fountain is likely for a commercial customer. Not many residential customers have these, though some do. The sprinkler heads, however, could be for anyone. For the purposes of this exercise, we'll assume that some of them are for residential customers and some are for commercial customers. The remainder of the items we will leave without a class. Okay, so we're going to edit the items grid as details as follows. On the first row, rock fountain, under class, select commercial. Okay, so here we go. Rock fountain, under class, we're going to select commercial. Okay. On the second row for sprinkler heads, change the quantity to 10 and select commercial. Sprinkler heads, we're changing that quantity to 10 and we're going to select commercial. Okay. Add a fifth row with the product service of sprinkler heads. Enter a quantity of 5 and under class, select residential. Okay, so we're creating a fifth row. We're doing sprinkler heads. We're going to change the quantity to 5. And then we're going to make it residential. Oops. I closed my grid. Okay. All right, now we're going to click Save and Close. Okay, now notice that I have changed a check that may or may not have actually cleared, and this check is linked to a purchase order right here. Okay, did I make any substantial changes? Did I make any changes that changed actually the total? No, I did not. All I did was change up the class so I could run reports on it. Okay, so when I click Save and Close, it's going to tell me the transaction you're editing is linked to others, linked to that purchase order. And if it were cleared, it would tell me, hey, this is already cleared the bank. Are you sure you want to make this change? And yes, I do want to make this change because I didn't make any changes that would affect that. If this were cleared reconciled from the bank, you could still hit save. Nothing would change because you weren't changing the amount for the transaction. Okay, so we're going to click yes. And I'm pretty sure that was step 6. Okay. All right. So now we have some income, we have some expenses that all have classes. Let's see what this looks like on the reports. And Joel, you can go ahead and post that next exercise for them. Okay. So running reports is part of the cool down section, which is why this looks different. Remember to use the same session of the sample company that you used for the entire cardio section. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be strength section, Joel. So if you could make a note that we need to change that. That's the thing about when I do these live, then that's when I notice, oh, that's supposed to be there's a typo right there, or I missed a click. All right, so anyway, so let's go ahead and read our scenario. Now that you've reconciled your bank statements and updated your inventory, it's time to run reports. Craig would like you to create separate P&L and balance sheets for each location. This was way back in the beginning when we were talking to Craig before. This is what he told you that he wanted to do. This is when you're in the gym and you get like a little animated video that tells you like what's happening in Craig's world. And that little animated video would tell you, oh, well, he asked you to run these reports. So he wants to create a separate P&L and balance sheets for each location. And he wants to know if you can break them out by commercial versus residential. Okay. So the first section of this is all that profit and loss by location. And we're going to skip that because we didn't do locations today. And I think I didn't look at this before, but let's see what we're going to do. Oh, all right. So we can't. We are going to go. We have to just do a profit and loss. Okay. So I'm going to go to vendors and I'm going to select reports. And then we're going to select profit and loss. Now, if we had done the location component of all of these exercises, we would be running a profit and loss by location. Notice that nothing is happening. This is what happens sometimes in the sample company. If your sample company doesn't seem to be behaving, usually if you just refresh the screen, then it'll do what you need it to do. So whatever. All right. Okay, so profit and loss. Here's a profit and loss. If we were showing this by location, you would see in the columns the different locations. And so what we want instead is we want to break it out by commercial versus residential, by class. Okay, and so the way we do that is we're going to customize. Let me make sure I tend to get ahead of myself. Okay, so we're going to click customize. Okay, and then we're going to use the columns drop down to select classes and then run report. So right here, the columns, let me just show you this again. Here's the report, okay, and the column right now just shows the total, okay, but what we want is for this columns not to just say total, but to have the classes broken out. So I'm going to go to customize, and here it says total only. That's what we're seeing now. So we're going to go instead, we want it to show classes. Okay. And so now I'm going to click run report. Okay. And notice it says commercial and it says residential. And there is a column that says not specified. Why does it say not specified? Because there are some transactions or some items in transactions that we didn't put a class on. If it doesn't have a class, that's what it's going to show up on the report. Those of you who are studying for the advanced test, ding, 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 remember that. Why would it say not specified? Because it doesn't have a class specified. And when we were doing locations, we saw this also. We saw this, that we said, oh, we have not specified. And so if it's not for the locations, what we decided was, well, if it's not specified, then we automatically can assume it's the main location. Okay. But that doesn't really make sense here. So the reason that we didn't put commercial and residential for every single transaction is because some things aren't for customers, right? Sometimes we have things like overhead. And so what would we do for overhead? Like what would we do for rent, say, for example? That's an expense. It's not for our commercial customers. It's not for our residential customers. And the answer is, if we wanted to, is, everything is all about what we want to see on reports. So if we wanted to, we could create a class called overhead. Those of you who are studying for the advanced test, pay attention to what I'm saying here. You could create a class for overhead, and then on all of your expenses, indicate that this is an overhead expense. And then that would, as long as everyone had a class, every transaction had a class, you could eliminate this not specified on your report. Okay. I gave you a lot. Those of you studying for the advanced class, I gave you a lot of hints. So the advanced certification, I gave you a lot of hints. Okay. All right. Well, that is all that I had planned to go out to cover today. And we are 9 minutes early, 10 minutes early. This is unheard of. Usually I talk so much that I go way, way, way off. Usually I talk so much, I go way off overboard. So here I am. So we have, let me just check the chat again. Margaret says, thank you and safe travels. Kurt says, great class. Thank you. Another great job, Michael. Thank you. Is there anything in the last 10 minutes that is burning in your brain that you would like me to cover I'm happy to do that because I do give you an hour, but I have I give you usually more than an hour, so maybe it's okay if we end a couple of minutes early this time. All right, so I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so you guys have a fantastic weekend. I will see you next time, crossing fingers that it will be from my home studio. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. All right, you guys take care. I'll see you next time.